Hi, this is Janos, Real World Audio, and I'm continuing on the design choices for loudspeaker design for two-way speakers, and specifically talking about my Voice of Lancelot loudspeaker, how I matched the woofer to the compression driver. And I'm going to contrast it with how Edward matched his woofer to his compression driver in his Voice of Lancelot, and what's the difference between them, and why those choices, and why those are, each of those choices are the perfect ones in both cases. So basically, last video we went through the need to match your compression driver to your woofer so you have an even frequency response throughout the whole region. And what is happening in Edward's case is that he is bringing his woofer up to 800 hertz. So he is crossing it quite a bit higher than I do. And why is he doing that? Because his compression driver is reaching okay, doesn't reach down as low, but it reaches a little bit higher, right? And to design the crossover in the Voice of Lancelot, the point where the compression driver and the woofer meets, it is limited by the ability of the compression driver. So as low as you can bring it without it losing energy at that point, without losing tonality, you can bring the compression driver, just bring it down to that point where you can, and then you have to bring your woofer to meet the the compression driver. So now, what Edward was doing is that he met them at 800 hertz, and also when they are mating, so it's not just that a driver can, let's say a woofer, it goes to 800 hertz or 500 hertz where you cross it, but because the way that they have the energy output is not a flat line. So you are not getting like this, it was 500 and it's flatlining to 800. The woofers have different efficiencies at different frequencies. And what you notice for every single woofer is that between 500 hertz and 800 hertz, there's a rise in the energy level. So they have higher output at 800 hertz by a couple of dB compared to 500 hertz. So what's happening there? What does it mean? So it means two things. Either you need to take care of this rise to cut down the level here. So in your speaker it doesn't rise as much, so you take care with the crossover to keep it flat. Otherwise you will notice a drop in the efficiency of the bass in contrast to your 800 hertz, and then the result will be having less bass, so it will be a more mid-range speaker. And then you need to adjust the crossover, the EQ down for the crossover point to bring that level a little lower. So the cost of that will be that your your efficiency of the speaker will drop by a few dB, and that's because you cannot use the efficient, I mean, my computer went to sleep. Okay, so you cannot use the full efficiency that the driver is capable to put out the whole frequency range, but you must limit the upper end of its output to keep the response level, so it's not mid-rangey but it sounds balanced, and then you get the feeling that you have, now I have bass, now I have full sound. And the reason why many speakers don't sound full, they sound weak or wimpy, is because, let me just draw in a new page. So there is this pen doesn't, it dried up. Okay, let's get to a new one. So this is what you would want to see, like a strong response, and then dropping, like let's say this is like 40 hertz here, and under 40 hertz it starts dropping, but up to 40 hertz your woofer is strong, so now it will have a nice and full sound. However, if the output is like, let's say something like this with the dotted line, that the output starts dropping first, that's when you will feel that it's a little bit thin. It doesn't have that energy. And even though if they are exactly the same, so you have one speaker that puts out this much energy and the other that puts out even more energy here as we go it through the upper bass, the lower mid-range, even though it puts out more, you will still hear it as if it has less bass, even though it has the exact same amount of bass. And you will perceive the bass as less because there's more of the mid-range. So that's one key design consideration, that all the drivers, as you go up higher in the frequency, they want to climb more and more and more. So what people do to take care of this is, of course, we put on crossover. And when you put on a crossover, and let's say this is here, it's 500 hertz, like I put an X there, that's 500 hertz. And if you say I put a second order crossover to cross it at 500 hertz, it means that at 500 hertz, it will be 3 dB lower, the output. So when that happens, then even much sooner than that, you will see the efficiency dropping. However, a crossover doesn't mean only that you are dropping the energy, you are also, the crossover acts as a redistributor of energy. So your speaker will have different energy distribution than before. So what will happen is that by 500 hertz you will be 3 dB down, but before that, like let's say here around like 300 hertz or so, you will have more energy than what you had without the crossover, and then it will start dropping like this. It's not exact, I draw it from a mirror, so it's like really clunky, really junky, and it's very exaggerated. But so let me try to just draw it so I can see what I'm drawing. Let's say I draw the first line, what I'm drawing. I need a new page. Okay, so let me just draw it, that here is the normal output. Okay, so let's see, this is like dropping at 500 hertz at first order crossover, and without that, with the dotted line, that would have been the normal. So normal, first order. And now if you are doing the same thing with second order crossover, it's going to do this, that line. So it's not just crossing it more, so you lose the energy much faster, but it also creates a hump. So under the crossover frequency, that area, maybe like half an octave will be overemphasized compared to not using the crossover. And that's why, and as you increase the orders of the crossover, that artifact will be more and more pronounced. And also, that's not just the only thing happening, the phase is changing as well. So when you read about things that the crossover, when you apply first order, second order, passive crossover, it changes the phase, then it means that it doesn't mean that it changes the phase of the whole output range. It means that from this point here, when the crossover starts affecting the frequency output, that's when the phase starts to change from the natural phase of the driver. And if it's first order, it starts changing very slowly. So here at the crossover point, you just have a few degrees of change in the phase, and that's quite unnoticeable. To have that 90-degree, you need to go out to the extreme end of the driver's workload, which is many octaves beyond the crossover frequency, for let's say for a first order crossover. So it will go to 90 degrees at 10 kilohertz. So the change when you look at the first order crossover is very minimal, and it's not going to impact the music that much. When you look at a second order crossover, the phase change is kicking in much faster, and it's made more obvious because there's an energy boost before that. And so what happens is that it's uh, in the case that I'm crossing at 500 hertz, so it's going to affect my 250 to 350 400 hertz region. So there I will have first a little a big bump and then a sudden drop. So that will shift the balance, so to the upper bass and lower mid-range will be overemphasized compared to the rest of the spectrum. And what it does, it gives a kind of sound that is really favorable for movies, a more punchy sound, so everything will have bigger impact, because with the upper bass we get a lot of, and lower mid-range we get a lot of energy that we register as the speed, like tish, like a drum beat or a rocket or anything. It will be more energetic. And if you listen to music that requires energy, that boost of energy will be a bonus to you. So that's when you want to choose a second order crossover, is when you looking for the energy of the sound. But because of the greater phase issues, it's going to compromise the tonality a lot. So if you listen to classical music, you listen to cello, you listen to violin, it will be noticeable and it will be skewing the tone quite a bit. However, in the case of Voice of Lancelot, because everything else is done right, you will still find it quite a bit better than your average loudspeaker at reproducing violin or classical orchestras. Yet, when you change it to a first order crossover approach for the woofer, it takes it to the next level compared to that. And what you will notice, what you will hear, if you compare both of them, and I did that, like changing the order from second to first and back and forth, is that when it's in the second order, it sounds more mechanical, sounds more artificial, it sounds more audiophile. Because sadly, 99% of audiophile systems have extremely strong character. I know on the papers you read, the brochures, the ads say it's perfectly neutral, perfectly flat. Yet, when you enter a place, you don't even need to go to the room where the stereo is playing. Just enter the house, enter the store, and you can immediately hear that it's an quote unquote audiophile system. And it's because it has its characteristic distortions to the sound. And when you say no, it doesn't distort, it's really flat, really neutral, yes, there are still distortions, just we are not willing to see and look into what's really happening. Uh, anyway, so where was I? I think I'm losing my train of thought here. So basically, now it's 13 minutes and I still haven't gotten anywhere close to the front horn loading. So why is that? What is the horn loading doing? So the horn loading is increasing the efficiency of the output. So what is happening here, as you see, is that compared to a flat level, if I use a first order crossover, I see the efficiency dropping. And it starts dropping because I'm using, check this out, first order crossover at 265 hertz. So that will mean that already my frequencies above 200 hertz are already starting to drop. And I'm mating it with the compression driver at 500 hertz. So it means that I have to compensate for the loss here that is happening with a front horn. So the horn is going to increase the efficiency to keep to counteract the effect of the crossover. And my front horn, it works that way so that it starts kicking in around that region, around 200 hertz, a little bit lower than that, and it carries me higher. So what Edward has calculated from 156 hertz to 312 hertz, and yes, that's what that part. So we take it from here to there basically. Wait, so the 300 hertz, yes. So basically the horn is like starting from the center of the cone and ends at the edge of the cabinet. So that's the whole thing that's acting as the horn. So this is the mouth of the horn, and there is the throat of the horn. And Edward is using his data as using this as the throat of the horn. So the start of the extra uh, front horn that I put on it, and that's where it ends. However, it's more than that, because the driver itself, the cone of the driver, also acts as a horn. And that's what most speaker designers leave out of the equation. And that's one reason, another reason why the driver efficiency climbs. So for this, my driver, the Altec 515C, this is known for the fact that even though it's like a large 16-inch driver, the C version, it keeps climbing up to 2 kilohertz like crazy, and increasing its efficiency like nuts. And that's why people try to avoid it, because it has a steady increase in the energy input into the mid-range. But when you use it like that, you use it into the mid-range, then because of the extra efficiency, there's comparably very low base energy put out. So that's why I am crossing it at a very low point, so to have the whole output of the base, and just cut the most of the high energy for the first order crossover at a very low point at 256 hertz, so that I don't have that high energy output in the mid-range, and I just use the compression driver to cover that zone. However, the first order crossover, it should be dropping 6 dB per octave, right? And in the case of the 515C, the drop is not 6 dB per octave. First, it's just little bit less than that, because the driver has its own rise. And I am using that phenomenon to add a front horn to that, which I'm going to just draw it here. So I'm exaggerating the drawing like this. So this is the driver cone itself, and that's the front horn attached, which, by the way, there's no sharp dots there. They're all rounded down, so there's no sharp angles for the front loading of the horn. They are nice corners. I should have drawn like that. Okay, maybe like this. So nice, neat corners. So basically, the horn is starting from right here at the base where the dust cap meets the main cone. So the horn effect, so this is the throat. The diameter of the dust cap is the throat of the horn. And then it rises here, and I have that extra little bit. So this entire system is my front horn. That's what I'm using for front loading the driver's output. And that is sufficient to keep the energy up to about 500 hertz or so. Well, not up to 500 hertz, because the driver, well, the way they add up together at 500 hertz is nice and natural. So basically, that little front horn is enough to keep them to add up nicely. So instead of dropping more, and then you have that 300 to 500 hertz region missing, so you have like that lower mid-range empty and hollow, and that would give a narrowness of the sound, like a little bit of a weightlessness to the sound, um, and it would kind of feel like the sound is smaller. So the speaker is kind of like would be shrinking if you had that happening. With adding the front horn, that I'm avoiding that scenario. And if I would be just using the second order crossover, then I would not need this extra little front horn, because that would, or I could actually make it a little smaller, because then I would not need this much fill up with the energy for such a wide band. And for Edward, because he is running his woofer up to 800 hertz, he does not need this region to fill up. And the way that a horn works, that the dimensions define what are the frequencies which are amplified. So you are quite limited as a designer how to use a front horn, and you can use it only when you can. And and um, and in the case when the driver, you are up in the 800 hertz region, there you are not in the need anymore for such a front horn loading, or if you do, you will pop out the mid-range way too much, and that's not helping at all. So you cannot just randomly add the front horn and expect that the entire sound will behave nice. It won't. It will skew the sound. If you put the horn to the wrong region, you will destroy what's happening. Sadly, a lot of speaker manufacturers commercially are doing that. They're just adding a horn and see that, wow, there's a higher efficiency. Overall, the speaker gets higher efficiency, but what's happening is that certain regions will be overemphasized, and people will notice it as a horn coloration, that it's doing something more, but at the cost of balance. So balance is the number one thing. So thank you guys for holding out for so long. This been just way too long, but let's continue from here. So if this was useful for you, please give us give me a thumbs up, give Edward a thumbs up, watch his video, and have an awesome day. Bye bye.